She was crying in my favorite hoodie, the navy one, the one with the paint stain on the cuff from when we remodeled the guest room. The hoodie I wore the night her dad passed away because she said it made me look safe. Now she was wearing it, knees pulled to her chest on the kitchen floor, mascara bleeding into the fabric. And I just stood there, holding a cold cup of gas station coffee in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. "What's that?" she asked. I didn't answer. I placed it on the kitchen counter like it weighed 100 pounds and watched her eyes track it like a dog watching the door before a storm. She already knew. It's wild how fast things fall apart. Not over months. Not even weeks. Just one night. One sentence. One bad idea whispered by the wrong person. Her best friend, Miri, had this theory. She believed men never change until they're forced to fear losing something. And apparently, Dana, my wife, had been listening a little too closely. 3 nights ago, Dana stood in this same kitchen and told me she wanted space. Not forever, just long enough for me to realize what I had. She said Miri called it emotional leverage. I called it emotional blackmail. I asked if she was serious. She said she was. She even rehearsed it. Had notes. Literal notes. On her phone. "I need you to miss me," she said. "I need you to see what life would feel like without me in it." She didn't expect silence. She didn't expect me to leave that night. She definitely didn't expect me to spend the next 48 hours consulting a lawyer, opening a new bank account, and printing divorce papers at a FedEx office while someone in the next cubicle ordered chicken wings on speakerphone. And now, she was here, in my hoodie, asking what's that, like she didn't already know. "You told me to imagine life without you," I said, sliding the envelope toward her. So I did. Her mouth opened, then shut, and that's when I noticed something. Her phone, usually glued to her hand, was upside down on the floor next to her, screen cracked. Not dropped. Thrown. And there were 6 missed calls from someone saved as Miri Crescent Moon. She wasn't crying because of the papers. She was crying because she realized the person who told her to play this game never taught her how to lose. Dana didn't touch the envelope right away. She just stared at it like it was ticking. I leaned against the counter. She was still on the floor in my hoodie, the same hoodie she'd once stolen for 3 straight weeks and called the coziest thing on earth. Now she looked like it weighed her down. A wet, oversized reminder that she'd miscalculated everything. She wiped her face with her sleeve and whispered, "You're really doing this?" I said nothing, just sipped the now lukewarm coffee and looked at the woman who once made me pancakes shaped like letters on my birthday. Now she looked like someone I used to know, someone who'd been coached into making a move she didn't fully understand. "I didn't mean forever," she said, voice cracking. "You weren't supposed to call it. It was just a test." I cut in, sharper than I meant to. "Because that's what this is, right? You and Miri with your emotional strategy sessions. Push me away and wait for me to crawl back. When the power dynamic. Make me beg." I let that hang in the air. The silence between us was louder than any shouting match. Dana finally stood up, the sleeves of the hoodie swallowing her hands. She looked smaller somehow. Not in a pitiful way, just exposed. She'd played her move expecting a counter. A desperate plea. A bouquet and an apology. Instead, I hired a notary. "You didn't even try to fix it," she said, trembling. "No," I replied, "because I didn't break it." That hit her. I could see it. For the first time in months, maybe years, she wasn't in control of the narrative. And I wasn't apologizing for a single thing. And then came the twist I didn't expect. "I'm not signing those," she said quietly. She looked me dead in the eyes. Voice steady now. Defiant. And that's when I laughed, not out of cruelty. It just slipped out. Because this woman, who told me to picture a life without her, now wanted to backpedal the moment I took her advice seriously. "Then don't," I said. "But I'm not coming back from this. You can stall it, drag it out, make a scene. But the second you turned our marriage into a bargaining chip, something in me shut off." She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "And before you say anything else, tell me why your phone looks like it lost a fight." Her face changed. Guilt? Panic? Maybe both. She hesitated just long enough to confirm what I already suspected. "Miri called," she admitted. "Said she didn't think you'd actually go through with it. That I needed to hold the line. That men fold under pressure." "And you believed her?" Dana stepped back, like I'd physically hit her with the words. I finished my coffee and dropped the cup in the sink. As I turned to leave the room, she said, "Wait." But I was already walking down the hall. I didn't slam the door. I didn't curse. I just closed it. And on the other side, I texted someone I hadn't talked to in 3 years. Not an ex. Not a lawyer. Someone who knew Miri. Really knew her. Because this whole thing? It suddenly felt less like bad advice. And more like a setup. When I reached out to Lainey, I expected to feel like a traitor. I didn't. Not even for a second. Lainey was Miri's ex-roommate. Emphasis on ex. I met her once, years ago, at a Halloween party where she was dressed as a broken clock. She had one of those rare types of intelligence, the kind that doesn't try to impress you, just quietly catalogs every stupid thing you do for later. And I knew, the moment Dana admitted Miri had pushed her into strategic detachment, that Lainey would have a backlog of red flags on standby. I sent a simple message. Hey, sorry it's random. You still have receipts on Miri? She replied less than 2 minutes later. That depends. What did she break this time? What followed was a 40-minute voice call in my car, parked outside a 24-hour diner. I never went inside. I just listened as Lainey casually laid out a map of sabotage, past boyfriends Miri had advised out of relationships, entire friend groups split by her manipulation, and a very particular obsession with what she called resetting the board. She doesn't like when people settle, Lainey said, because if they're happy, she has to look at her own mess. So she ruins things. You wouldn't be the first marriage she's fractured just to see if she could. The most damning part? This wasn't even shocking. Some part of me always knew Miri was bad news. But I never realized how surgically she operated. She didn't just whisper doubt. She crafted whole scenarios, manufactured moments of awakening for her friends, then stepped back and played the spiritual savior while everything burned down behind her. She called you a ghost, Lainey said. Said Dana needed to wake up from the relationship coma. That was her exact wording. A coma. I actually laughed. I shouldn't have, but it was just such an aggressively Miri thing to say. She saw loyalty as lethargy, stability as stagnation. And now she had Dana, once the most grounded person I knew, floating 10 feet off the floor, trying to manifest a better version of herself by throwing away the life we built. That night, I didn't go home. I drove for 2 hours. No music. Just the sound of tires chewing pavement and my own voice in my head asking over and over again, was she really done with me? Or just hypnotized by the worst person she could have trusted? At around 2:30 a.m., I parked outside my brother's place. He wasn't home, probably on night shift, but he'd given me a spare key for emergencies. I walked in, fed his cat, and crashed on the couch. The second I lay down, my phone buzzed. It was Dana. No words. Just a photo. My hoodie. Folded. Left on the bed. I stared at it for 10 full minutes. I didn't reply, because as much as I wanted to believe that was some kind of olive branch, it felt more like bait. Like she wanted me to come back without having to say the words. But this time, I wasn't going to be the one who bends. If she wanted to fight for us, she'd have to actually fight. And if she didn't, well, I had already started remembering what peace felt like, and oddly enough, it looked a lot like a stranger's living room and a cat that wouldn't stop purring on my chest. 3 days passed before I saw her again. It wasn't supposed to be that long, but silence has a funny way of stretching when no one wants to be the first to break it. I stayed at my brother's place, living off cereal, microwave burritos, and the kind of sleep that doesn't really recharge you. Just pauses the noise for a while. Dana didn't call, didn't text, not after the hoodie photo, and I didn't chase. I wasn't playing a game. I just didn't want to keep stepping into the same fire expecting it to stop burning. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from an unknown number around noon on a Thursday. I almost didn't pick up. Something told me to. Mr. Cadwell? A woman's voice said. This is Amanda Vega. I'm your wife's attorney. It took me a second to register. My wife. Attorney. She continued, professional but overly casual, like this was a conference call about printer toner. Your wife has initiated counterfilings. There are a few items she'd like addressed before proceeding. I didn't say anything. Not because I was shocked. I wasn't. But because the full reality of it had finally hit. This wasn't a test anymore. This was a war. Dana had gone lawyer-up mode. And she hadn't even told me herself. I'll email over the documents by end of day, Vega said, before politely clicking off like she was finishing a lunch order. When the email landed, I opened it expecting the usual. Separation of assets, maybe a claim on the apartment, some vague clause about the cat. Instead, I found a petition for exclusive occupancy, a formal request to freeze joint accounts, and, get this, an allegation of emotional abandonment. Abandonment. I laughed so hard I actually choked. The woman who pulled a disappearing act inside our marriage, who emotionally checked out months before we even argued, was now painting herself as the victim of neglect because I had the audacity to take her seriously when she asked for space. I forwarded the docs to my own lawyer, a quiet guy named Brenton who looks like he's either solving a murder or trying to remember where he left his wallet. He read everything, paused, and then said, "She's escalating. This isn't about resolution anymore. It's about optics." That word stuck with me. Optics. This wasn't about love. It was about looking like the one who got away, even if she had to twist the truth so hard it snapped in half. That night, I drove back to our apartment. I didn't go in, just sat in the parking lot, lights off, watching the second-floor window glow behind our curtains. My curtains. Ones I picked out because she said I had a better eye for color than she did. It felt like looking at a stage set for a play I wasn't allowed to star in anymore. And then I saw something that twisted the knife. Her car was gone, but Miri's was there. I watched the taillights blink as she locked it and walked toward my door like she owned the lease. She had a bag of takeout, 2 drinks, and a bounce in her step like she'd just landed the final move in a chess game. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just advice. This wasn't Miri being protective. This was Miri inserting herself into the life we built. And as I sat there gripping the steering wheel, I started asking the questions I'd been avoiding since the beginning. What if she didn't want me to fight for Dana? What if she wanted Dana to leave me so she could fill the gap? I didn't have proof yet, but I had time. And if they wanted to play games in the dark, fine. I'd turn on every light in the house until the truth burned through the lies. The day I got back into the apartment, something felt off the second I stepped through the door. Not visibly. The furniture was in place. The air smelled like those overpriced cinnamon candles Danae always bought around fall. But the energy was different. Like I was walking into a version of my own home that had been rehearsed without me. There was a scarf hanging on the coat rack that wasn't hers. A lavender one. Danae never wore lavender. And a second toothbrush in our bathroom, travel-sized, like it had only just arrived. None of it screamed guilt, not yet. But it whispered. I hadn't told her I was coming. Legally, I still had a right to be there. We were in limbo, not separated by cord. But I knew showing up unannounced would make a point. Once she'd feel whether she admitted it or not. The place was empty. She was gone. Probably with Miri. I wasn't there to snoop. That's what I told myself. I just wanted to grab some of my things. Clothes, backup chargers, the cast iron skillet she always hated but that I'd seasoned perfectly over years. But then, as I was digging through the top drawer of the hallway cabinet, looking for an old USB drive, I found it. A folder labeled Plan B. No password. No encryption. Just sitting there like it wasn't meant to be seen, or like it had already served its purpose. Inside, screenshots. Dozens. Conversations between her and Miri. Some were weeks old, others from just days before the night she asked for space. At first, it was what I expected. Miri coaching her through how to detach, how to stage emotional distance, how to bring up the idea of a trial divorce in a way that would trigger maximum reflection. But then it got worse. Way worse. One message from Miri, dated 2 weeks before our kitchen fight, read, "Once he takes the bait, we leverage. You can get the car under your name. I'll handle the lease situation with my guy. If he resists, hit him with the abandonment angle. No judge will side with a husband who disappeared for days." There it was. Strategy. Premeditated. Like I was a pawn in a game they'd been setting up long before I even noticed the board. And it wasn't just Danae being manipulated. She was actively planning around it. Responding with things like, "He'll freak out, but it won't last. He always caves. If not, at least I won't be alone." That last part hit harder than anything else. Not because she was wrong about me. In the past, I did cave. I bent. I compromised. I apologized first. But this time, she was wrong. Because I wasn't going to cave. Not now. And not after what I saw next. Buried in the same folder was a PDF labeled Rental Agreement, Temp. It was a sublease contract, barely 2 weeks old. The lessor? Miri. The signee? Danae. Move in, pending. She hadn't told me. Hadn't mentioned anything about moving in with her. Hadn't even hinted. But now I was looking at legal proof that the entire space talk had been a smokescreen, a prelude to relocation. Not for clarity, not for emotional processing, but for exit. And maybe, just maybe, for replacement. Because the final file in the folder wasn't legal at all. It was a selfie. Blurry, low light, clearly taken in a rush. Danae and Miri on our couch. Wine glasses. Laughter. And one visible line of caption at the bottom, cut off from a screen capture. Tell him I'm thinking things through winking face LOL. I closed the folder. I didn't copy it. Didn't forward it. I left it exactly as I found it. Because if this was chess, they'd just assumed I'd never learn the rules. But I'd stopped playing by theirs a long time ago. And now I wasn't interested in winning. I was interested in exposing the game. 2 days passed before Danae figured out I'd been inside the apartment. I had been careful. No drawers left open. No files moved. I didn't even take the cast iron skillet. But she still knew. I could tell by the tone of her voice when she finally called me. Not texted, actually called, for the first time in over a week, and started with one sentence. You were never supposed to open that drawer. It wasn't a question. It was a confession laced in frustration. There was no hey. No how are you. Not even a fake attempt at civility. She just went straight into damage control. I stayed silent, letting the tension breathe on the line like a third person listening in. Those files were personal, she said. You mean the ones detailing how to manipulate court optics and trap me into an abandonment claim? I replied. That shut her up for about 5 seconds. Then she pivoted. You don't know the whole story. That was the phrase. The phrase. The last refuge of people caught red-handed. And yet I still gave her space to explain, because some naive, oxygen-starved part of me still wanted to believe that all of this, the staged distancing, the fake move out, the Miri partnership, had been a moment of weakness, not a calculated demolition. So I asked, then tell me the story. All of it. She didn't hesitate. She told me that it started months ago, during one of those nights I worked late. Miri had come over, wine in hand, ranting about a guy she'd been seeing who ghosted her after a weekend getaway. Danae had been consoling her, offering comfort, and somewhere in the haze of it all, Miri had said, at least you're not in a dead marriage like mine was. Danae swore she laughed it off, that she defended me, but the seed had been planted. She started paying closer attention to our routines. The lack of newness. The recycled date nights. The way I always watched the same documentaries before bed. She said it started feeling claustrophobic. That she loved me, but didn't feel seen anymore. And Miri, ever the opportunist, offered her a lifeline disguised as support. You need to shake the tree, she had said. Make him feel the distance. Make him work to pull you back. So that whole night, I said, when you told me you needed space, it was rehearsed? Danae didn't answer directly. She just said, I didn't know what else to do. But that's where I stopped her. Because here's the thing. I could have forgiven doubt. I could have forgiven fear. I could have even forgiven her asking for time to figure things out. But what I couldn't stomach, what I refused to excuse, was the way she'd allowed someone else to choreograph the entire unraveling of our marriage and then act shocked when I didn't dance along. You didn't shake the tree, I said. You chopped it down and set fire to the roots. And now you want to ask me why it doesn't grow anymore? She started crying. Real tears this time. Not performative. Not strategic. But too late. Then she said the line that finally confirmed everything I'd suspected. I don't even think I want to be with her, she whispered. I just didn't want to be alone. That was it. The truth behind the months of manipulation, the sudden emotional sabotage, the legal ambush. She wasn't chasing freedom. She was running from emptiness. And Miri, who had every reason to want company in her own chaos, had offered Danae a way out that didn't look like failure. Except now Danae was looking back at the ashes, wondering why everything felt colder than before. I think I made a mistake, she said, barely audible. I didn't answer, because she hadn't made one. She'd made dozens, and at every step, she had a chance to turn around. She didn't. So I hung up. I didn't yell. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even wait to hear if she had more to say. Because sometimes, the loudest way to leave is with silence. I didn't expect to see Miri in public. I thought people like her only operated in private, behind group chats, half-truths, and text threads loaded with passive-aggressive emojis. But there she was, sitting in the corner of Marrow's cafe, sipping a matcha latte like she hadn't lit a marriage on fire and passed the gasoline can around for notes. I didn't plan to talk to her. Hell, I hadn't even known she'd be there. I was just grabbing coffee with a friend, a mutual from my grad school days, and on the way out, I saw her through the window. Alone, scrolling, smiling. Something in me paused. Maybe it was pettiness. Maybe it was a need for answers Danae couldn't give me. Or maybe it was the quiet, gnawing curiosity of seeing what she looked like now that the wreckage had settled. So I walked in, sat down at her table without asking. The look on her face? Priceless. Not shock, not guilt, but this flicker of brief discomfort, like a magician realizing her trick has been decoded. Well, she said, blinking slowly. Didn't expect to see you here. Yeah, I replied. I could say the same. Thought you preferred to do your damage from the sidelines. She didn't rise to it, just leaned back in her seat and folded her arms. If you're here to blame me, don't bother. Danae made her own decisions. Oh, you're right, I said. But I also don't think Danae woke up one morning and decided to manufacture legal leverage, document fake emotional abandonment, and draft a silent move-out agreement with a timestamp that just happened to line up with your sublease offer. Her eyes didn't blink at that, just a soft shrug. You're assuming I told her what to do. No, I said. I'm assuming you were waiting for her to need someone when I finally walked away. And that's when her posture changed. Not dramatically, just a small shift, shoulders straightened, lips pressed, like I'd struck a nerve that had been hiding just under her carefully curated nonchalance. You know, she said after a pause, it's funny. All this energy spent on blaming me, when maybe the real question is, why was she even open to my advice in the first place? I almost laughed. She was good. I'll give her that. Twisting the blade and handing it to you with a ribbon on top. I don't care what you think I did, she continued. But you need to accept that you weren't enough for her anymore. You got predictable, soft, safe, and some people suffocate under that. I didn't flinch. Not because it didn't sting. It did, but because I finally understood what Miri was after. Not Danae. Not even revenge. She wanted validation. She wanted to believe that tearing someone else's stability apart meant she had power. That if she couldn't build something of her own, she could at least dismantle what someone else had. And the worst part? Danae had given her the permission slip. I stood up, grabbed my coffee, looked down at her for the last time. You didn't steal her, I said. You gave her an excuse. And maybe that's even worse. She didn't answer. I walked out before she could. That night, Danae texted me again. Just one sentence. She told me you confronted her. I didn't reply, because the point of the confrontation was never to fix anything. It was to confirm the truth I already knew. Some people don't want you back. They just don't want to see you move on first. The final time I saw Danae, it wasn't in a courtroom or over some dramatic, last-minute, tearful confrontation. It was a Wednesday morning at 8:13 a.m. I remember the exact time because the microwave clock was blinking like it always did after a power surge. She stood in the entryway of my apartment, holding a small potted succulent, of all things, like some peace offering from a war we both secretly wanted to end weeks ago. I came to grab the rest of my things, she said softly. Figured early was best. She was dressed simply. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked more like the version of herself I fell in love with, years before the layered advice, before the second toothbrush, before the strategic distancing. I let her in. No words. Just a quiet nod. She moved gently, like she didn't want to wake a sleeping animal. Took her books, a few kitchen items, an old Polaroid camera we hadn't used since New Orleans. I stayed in the hallway, leaning against the doorframe, sipping coffee from my chipped Planet Fitness mug. Watching her move through rooms we used to share, like a ghost erasing herself with every careful item she packed. And then, just before she left, she turned around and looked at me with eyes that weren't asking for anything anymore. I was scared, she said. Not of you. Of staying still. Of waking up 10 years from now and feeling like life had already happened. I nodded. Not in agreement, just in understanding. I should have told you the truth, she added. All of it. And not just followed someone else's idea of what healing looks like. I set the mug down. Took a breath. We both lost something, I told her. But I don't think it was each other. She blinked, caught off guard by the softness in my voice. I think we lost the version of ourselves we thought we had to be. And maybe that's a good thing. She smiled. A small, real one. The kind people wear when the weight finally lifts. She didn't ask for a hug. I didn't offer one. And yet, somehow, It felt complete. Finished. Not like a broken thing, but like a chapter that ended right where it was supposed to. She left the succulent on the counter. "It doesn't need much," she said with a smile, hand already on the door. "Just light and a little patience." The door didn't slam. It clicked. Soft. Final. That afternoon, I sat on the balcony with Frisco. Yes, he chose me in the divorce. The plant beside us, sun catching on its thick green leaves. I looked out over the street, not waiting for anything, not grieving what I lost, just being. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt still. Not stuck. Still. Not waiting to be begged for. Not begging. Just at peace. A month later, I joined a local community class. Cooking, of all things. I met people. I laughed again. I burned 3 different kinds of pasta trying to impress the instructor. And I left every session with my hands smelling like garlic and something that almost resembled hope. No twist ending. No dramatic reconciliation. Just freedom. Not from her, but from the version of myself that thought I needed someone else to feel whole.